All right, welcome to the first edition of Post-Game Buckeye Blueprint. I gave that a lot of thought. I figure that we can stick with that theme. And this Post-Game Blueprint will be the last Post-Game Blueprint of the entire season. It was quite a way to begin this, but 31-0. We just saw Ohio State fall to Clemson. I think you're the only one who picked Clemson to win. I'm pretty certain you also didn't pick it to be 31-0. So how did this happen?
Well, coming into this game, I thought it was going to be a case that Deshaun Watson was really going to have a lot of success today against Ohio State's secondary, and that was strictly for the fact that Ohio State couldn't put pressure on him. Well, it actually ended up being the opposite for Ohio State. They had a ton of pressure on J.T. Barrett all game long. The offensive linemen, talking to them, they were very distraught. They said themselves, we just didn't perform. We just did not play as well as we needed to. It was very interesting to see how easily it seemed that Clemson's defenders on blitzes were just having free runs to the quarterback. And Billy Price said himself, he knew plenty of plays that he messed up, plenty of blocks that he missed, and he wished he could go back and change it. They tried telling me, though, that they knew exactly what was coming. This wasn't anything that they didn't expect, I guess, from what Clemson was throwing at them. But I find that hard to believe. What I really saw today, it just seemed like a team that was not prepared at all to go against a very, very stout Clemson defense.
It seemed reminiscent of that Northwestern game, those games that we said were throwaway games at the time, and now we look back on it, it's like, wow, that team came to play today. Because when we look back, we think that the team that played against Michigan was great. They really were. They executed well. This team was not.
Well, yeah, you look at the offense all year, kind of what's hurt them is the inability to protect JT and keep pass rushers out of the backfield. They let up 11 tackles for loss today, and we knew how stout this Clemson defensive front was, and by God, they showed it. I mean, Clemson from the start of the game till the very end just simply dominated Ohio State. Ohio State's defense, they faltered a little bit at the beginning, but all in all, they kind of kept OSU in the game like we thought they would. 2 picks, I thought that would change the game a little bit, but it certainly wasn't. You didn't have that game-changing play like we saw against Michigan and some of the other games this year. Through and through, Ohio State just got beaten. They got beat bad.
Do you think that's sort of an indication that their talent wasn't what we thought it was, what it was at this juncture of the season, that they sort of, I don't know, was it the schedule that happened? I really am trying to figure out what happened, because I feel like there are two different teams that we saw at different points of the season.
Well, I think it all boils down to the fact of we've seen for many weeks now, throughout the whole season, there were certain things that really needed to be changed. And while I know Ohio State does a lot of preparing every week, week in and week out, I think there were certain things that just weren't addressed here. Mike Weber had some very great games this season. He also had some very not so great seasons. Last game against Michigan, 26 yards and 11 carries. He comes into this game, and I expected him to have a big impact. I thought maybe he'll shed that freshman status that he has. And what does he do? He proceeds to fumble the ball twice and, barely make an impact at all. Curtis Samuel said himself after the game he didn't make a big enough impact. I think the talent is there for Ohio State. That's no question of the talent. But, sometimes you just don't execute, and sometimes the changes aren't made by coaching staffs. Mm-hmm. In my opinion today, it was just a combination of about everything going wrong that could possibly go wrong for a football team. It's actually amazing to me after watching that performance and looking back at the box score, this score wasn't worse than it actually ended up being.
Yeah, even going to that, like any time Ohio State had anything going on offense or made a play on defense, even the missed field goal there, it was a 3-and-out for Ohio State. Any chunk play, it was a negative play after that. Simply just couldn't get anything formulaic. It was a systematic error on Ohio State just through and through the game. They just couldn't get anything going against Clemson. And, you're going to have games like that. Last time they played Clemson, they had a complete overhaul of the defense. You wonder if they're going to do that on offense now moving forward.
And, maybe we should give Clemson a little bit more credit. Those guys really played outstanding today. It's going to sound like we're just ripping on Ohio State and we're just going to say, well, they did everything wrong. Well, Clemson did about everything right. So
yeah, they were very clearly the better team today, no question.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think what most people are now going to do is they're going to look forward. And it seemed like there were a lot of questions at the press conference, both in the locker room and at the podium, about who's coming back, what's going to happen, are there going to be changes. Urban Meyer seemed to think that they were really going to look hard, and he hinted that there may be big changes down the road before next season, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And J.T. Barrett also said that he doesn't know if he can end that, he can leave. I think it was, he doesn't think that he can end the season, end his career at Ohio State like that. Mm-hmm. Who do you think comes back and on Ohio State, and do you think that JT Barrett returns as starter? Because for the most of this year, I said that he wouldn't, but the way he's played lately, I don't really see how any NFL team's going to take him.
Right, and we know two things. Billy Price has come back, and then Sam Hubbard also said he's going to return. So we know those guys are coming back. Tyquan Lewis, he hinted, it sounded like you told me, that he was going to come back, but the way he's played this year, and certainly last year in his first year as a starter, I would expect him to leave. Garyon Conley, it sounds like he's going to leave as well. But all these guys still said they have to talk to their families, weigh their options, talk to the coaches. Raekwon McMillan even said that he doesn't want to end his career like this. He wants to end it on a good note, which I found really interesting. But then you look at the first-year starters like Malik Hooker, Marshawn Lattimore. I think those guys had the tougher decisions. All in all, yes, JT Barrett, I expect him to come back. I expect Malik Hooker to go, Marshawn Lattimore to stay, and Raekwon McMillan. I think we'd all be pretty shocked if he stayed.
And there's also Curtis Samuel, who I know you have a long relationship with, Nick. Do you think that he leaves as well? Because he's the one person that you didn't mention.
Well, I think this is kind of interesting for Curtis Samuel. He's in quite the dilemma, in my opinion. He had a fantastic season. I can't deny that. No one can deny that, really. But, what position is he going to play if he goes to the NFL? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a running back? I don't think he knows that at this point. I don't think anyone knows that at this point. So maybe he would benefit from coming back next year and, kind of getting more reps at one position and solidifying himself as that kind of player. Maybe more of a wide receiver, maybe more of a running back. He said he was going to take the time, talk to his family, the same thing that we get through with all these guys who apparently haven't made a decision. I want to go off of what you said about Tyquan Lewis, though. He never straight out said exactly what he was going to do, but the look on his face, the way he was talking, I really don't see that guy letting this end like this for him. He's had quite the career here, and to end it on this, I think that would just leave it would just be a sour note for him.
There's so much potential in these Buckeyes, and this wasn't really the season that we thought they would, that a lot of people thought they would have. This could have been a rebuilding season. They're super young. It turned out that it wasn't, and they made the college football playoff, and here we are. It ended on a sour note for the Buckeyes, but I think that they're going to take it in the long run, looking back on it.
And I think you can look at the Clemson team last year that came so close to a national title and lost. Granted, OSU lost this year in the semifinal, but they should have a lot coming back like Clemson had this year, and who knows, they could be in the same spot Clemson is now in 2017 playing for a national title.
You know what's interesting, though? I do agree with you on that they could be there in 2017, but I think you have to have some major overhauls on the offensive side of the ball. The passing game has not looked good in basically almost this entire season. We watched the Bowling Green game, and I think everyone immediately jumped on the bandwagon saying, this team is going to be fantastic. They're going to be able to move the ball over the place. Guys, it's Bowling Green. Come on. So, just looking back at that now, just drop passes everywhere, ineffective blocking sometimes. It's just something has to change there.
I really think that that's what Urban Meyer was hinting at in the post-game press conference, and there's a lot of time to make some changes, and we'll see what they are. But any closing thoughts before we leave them all for, wow, we are in 2017, by the way, as we record this.
Yeah, I think you can just look at the talent OSU is coming back. There's definitely room for change, and I think change is going to be made, so expect that. Offense, they just didn't have it this year, and Clemson was the better team. I think that was pretty plain and simple throughout the game.
For me, if JT Barrett does decide to leave, which I think we can all agree, we don't think he's going to leave. I actually expect Dwayne Haskins to be their starting quarterback next year. We'll save that for another time. And I want to go away from Ohio State a little bit on this one. After watching what Clemson did here today, I think we're going to have one heck of a national championship coming up.
There is no doubt about that, and I'm so excited that you said that, because we definitely are going to have another Buckeye Blueprint now. Yeah. We're definitely going to have one. All right. Thank you, Jacob and Nick and Ashley, for all season. We will see you sometime in the future.